Hi everybody, I'm making this video today to talk about, to make a number of few connections, and first of all I'm going to be talking about the spiritual and material world, and I will be relating that later on to politics and the economy and voting and the law. So first of all, I'd like to clarify that the material and spiritual world are actually interdependent, and they do coexist, and there is no split between them. And there is within the spiritual world, which is thoughts, essentially that's what spirit is, thoughts, both living and past thoughts, that inhabit the human consciousness in which we all live. And in this world it's very clear that people who have more wealth and power are considered, or at least they proclaim themselves, and the media shows them to be living in some sort of higher consciousness of worldly life, human worldly life, while the majority of people occupy a lower consciousness of life. And the thing is, we all know that they live up there in their echelons, higher echelons of power, mostly because the people on the ground, the masses of people and masses of life, are oppressed, and they operate a money system based on usury, which is really a lawless money supply, because it is actually theft. That is what it is. It's theft by force and threat and fear. And the issue of fear came to a focus for me in 1992. I was writing a piece called Freedom in the City, which it was based on a diagram I'd drawn, and it was to explore the split between male and female, and I was hoping to try and understand it and find a way to positively address it. And while writing that piece, I unexpectedly had an epiphany in which I understood that we don't die, that we do actually have a quantum-like soul and spirit, and that these live on after our death, and that we very likely are most of us are reincarnated into life after life. And I wasn't a religious person, and I'm not, in the sense that, going to church and all that kind of thing. So I was quite surprised to have this experience, and to suddenly just know this, like, I know I've got a heart, and I know I've got a brain, and suddenly I knew I had a light body, you see. It was that sort of profound that hit me. And 2 weeks after I had this epiphany, I had an experience in which I met a light being, a being made entirely of light. And I've talked about the whole experience in this article, which I donated freely to the People's Disclosure, and also it's published in Mindscape magazine, which I donated the article freely to them as well. And I feel that this light being was actually confirming the experience that I'd had 2 weeks before. And just prior to seeing the light being, I had a feeling, my body was just, this energy was flowing through my body that just felt like pure love, pure unconditional love. And it told me something, not in words, but in the feeling of it, in the beautiful. It was so right, it felt so right, and it felt like it was my right, and that this love, unconditional love, was coming from this universal law of abundance and compassion. Now, I have recently, I am hoping to publish a book which I explain this law, and also the fact that we don't live by compassion at the moment at all. We're living in a competition, and my book does explain how that has happened and why. But for now, I can basically explain to you that the universal law of abundance in compassion is basic, supporting our human, animal and earth rights. That's what it is about, and that's what it's there for. So if we remember that we are actually, if I can find the picture, we are actually quantum energy within ourselves. We carry this eternal quantum energy, and that all our thoughts are actually photons operating through electrical charges in our brain, and that they do surround us. You know, we live in our thoughts, literally. We inhabit our thoughts, and we inhabit a world of thoughts. We sit on thoughts, we live in thoughts, we buy thoughts. Thoughts become material, our material reality. And obviously in this world, the more money people have, the more material, the more of the material world they can command and design and control, and it influence more people. And so it's, in a way, it's like our minds are a garden, and thoughts are like seeds. They can grow in there, and they can feed on thoughts that have been generated through our own lived experience, because we're always contributing new experiences into, and new understandings about those experiences into the consciousness. And obviously we live in the human consciousness, and the human consciousness lives in the natural earth consciousness as well. We are a part of that. So when you've got an essentially lawless money supply that isn't supporting universal law and of compassion, and is actually promoting the opposite and insisting that everybody must compete, then, you know, the thoughts that actually become into materiality, they're not always going to be good, and the material world is going to be denied. A lot of material needs are not going to be satisfied. For most people, you're going to end up with a system of poverty, because that's what usury will leave behind, because it is a theft. And in a way, it is a form of cancer. It's like a cancer, a psychological cancer, because it's life, intelligence, that's not living lawfully, you see. It's living outside of the law, so it will eventually destroy its host in its pursuits of its own selfish desire just to live, because it thinks, you know, oh well, I'm going to die anyway, and my host is going to die, so I might as well just enjoy myself for the time that I've got. And you see, it was that when I was writing my piece, that made me realise the finality of death. You know, until people lost this fear of death, we were never ever going to resolve any of the problems in the world, because there was always going to be that latent, deep seated fear and depression of the fact that yes, and then you're going to die. And it's when people understand that no, you are going to live life after life after life, or inhabit other quantum dimensions, or even perhaps other planets on in the universe, that suddenly we realise we're on an eternal journey of discovery and wonder of this amazing, and that's when we realise how amazing the universe truly is, you know. So at the moment, the consciousness governing the people of Britain, which is broadcast through the media, is telling us that we are about to have a general election, and that we have a right, a legal right, to vote for one of these people. And there should also be a lady here for the Green Party, but they've obviously decided she's not as that important, so they've left her out. But she should be with these people as well, these leaders. And the thing is that we're told that we can elect one of these leaders and they will rule the country, and they've all put forward their manifestos, as you know, and we can do, well, which one works best for us? And the most people who decide to vote for one leader or the other, that leader will be in power, or they'll make a coalition and then choose one of them to be in power. And so we are told that this is our democratic right, and this is democracy in process. Right. So the actual truth of the matter is that you don't vote for any of these. You vote for their MPs. Their MPs are the people who have elected these to lead them, you see. And so we vote for one of their MPs, and the one whose most MPs get the most votes, the most seats in Parliament, they're the ones who win. Those leaders are not answerable to the electorate. They are answerable only to their MPs, you see. The MPs aren't answerable to the electorate either. They get into power. We can ask them questions or advise them which way we'd like things to go, but they don't have to listen to us, and they don't. They ignore us. You know, the only place democracy takes place is in Parliament amongst the MPs and the leaders, the elected MPs and leaders. They're the ones that get to vote on issues of national importance, like, you know, invading Iraq, or using depleted uranium in Iraq, or privatising the NHS, or privatising benefit services, and all making cuts in public funding. All these kind of things, they're all decided in the democracy of Parliament, not of Britain. Because once we've voted for them, that's it. Our part in the democracy has ended. And the legal fact of it is that when you go to your polling station with your poll card, and you hand your poll card in and you place your little X in the box, you are actually legally declaring yourself mentally incompetent. That's the truth of it. You're declaring yourself mentally incompetent. Now, Peter of England, he has explained this very, very clearly. And, you know, I must say, until I saw his video, I'd always suspected that there was something fundamentally wrong with the way the voting system worked, and that's why I've only ever voted once in my life. I just felt it didn't seem like a right to me. It felt wrong. Now he explains it perfectly, the legal situation, and I'll leave you the link. And I do advise you to watch his video and to share it with other people, because we do need to wake up to the reality of what we're living in, because, you know, we are living in very serious times.
You are never ever listened to, because the moment that you go into that ballot box and put an X onto the ballot paper, what it is signifying is that you are declaring and assuming and affirming that you are a mental incompetent, a lunatic, or a juvenile that is not competent to make his own decisions, and therefore will have those decisions made for you. And that, my friends, is the sole reason that the political machine never pays any attention to you, and that they just carry on and regard you as children within the estate which they manage. You're in their house, the House of Commons, and they are the masters within that house.
So there you have it. He states very clearly that when you're making your vote, you go to one of the official polling booths, that you are actually declaring yourself mentally incompetent. And people just don't understand that as a legal fact. And obviously if you try to tell people, it's going to upset them, because, you know, they want to cling to what they see as normal, you see. And all this is presented to us as normality, the normal world. People feel safe and comfortable and secure in what they see as a strong worldly reality. This is real, you know, like being experiences and higher consciousness. You can write books about them and make films about them and talk about them, but, you know, when it comes down to actual reality, what we're going to live in is this, isn't it? You know, we're going to be governed by Parliament, and here's the public. Well, Banksy, I feel, is perfectly represents it, portrayed the general public's like feeling towards Parliament in general. And here he's put UKIP, but really it could be any political party that's standing for election to get into this corrupt place. And the thing is that if we take, because Parliament is corrupt and we know it's corrupt, there's solid evidence to prove that the bankers are criminals, they've been involved in criminal activities, fraud, theft, drugs, money laundering, you name it. We know they're infested by paedophiles. You know, anybody who thinks that's all historic, you've got to be living in cloud cuckoo land, really you have. Because they are in, and they've been in for a long time. And that's the spirit and consciousness of Parliament. There's a spirit that's controlling Parliament, and that's why there's so many MPs and ministers and other people in positions of public authority who were involved in things like paedophilia, because they can be controlled and manipulated. And those people themselves use fear and other tactics to control and manipulate the people that they have contact with. And when you think that each MP is representing millions of people, and you think that that MP can be controlled because he's a paedophile, or he's being controlled and manipulated by a paedophile, then you get to understand exactly how dangerous that consciousness is when it's got power, you see. So it's a very, very, very serious thing to vote, to go in, give your poll card, because your poll card is actually your legal statement. It's a legal thing to say that you are a citizen of Britain, and you do have a right to have your say, your democratic say, you see. That is what your poll card actually represents. And when you're putting that poll card into their designated poll stations to vote for one of their designated leaders, the actual reality of it is, in order to do that, to vote for one of these people, you have to declare yourself mentally incompetent. That is what you have to do. Now, I've been trying to establish Ubuntu Sheffield, and I was contacted by Ubuntu UK, Paul Toussaint, who he's one of the leaders for Ubuntu UK, and there's also Mark Slay. Well, Ubuntu was established by Michael Tellinger, and he'd established a system of contributionism for South Africa, and then realised that actually South Africa already had its own ancient tradition of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is actually a system of contributionism, and so he called his movement Ubuntu South Africa, Unity and Higher Consciousness for a New World. Now, Ubuntu basically promotes a cash-free society, a society of contributionism where everybody gives whatever they can, and there's no judgments and there's no force, and people are free to develop and to give as much as they want to give, and take out as much as they need to take out, you know, and to accept that in this world some people can give more and some people will give less, but at the end of the day, we don't judge one another, we all support each other, and that way we all facilitate positive energies and develop the best in our children. And that's the whole idea, you see, is to raise children in a loving, lawful society. And Ubuntu, the foundation of Ubuntu is universal law of abundance and compassion, because Ubuntu lives by a system of abundance, you see. Abundance creates abundance, and thrift creates thrift. And that's just the way that it works. So Ubuntu contacted me and asked me if I would be voting for them. And so I'd not long seen Peter of England's video, and I did write to Paul Toussaint and say, look, at first, before I saw Peter of England's video, I wrote to Paul Toussaint and said, look, I would like to vote for you, but actually I can't, because legally I am making myself complicit in treason, because Parliament is corrupt and we're being governed by internal tyranny, and that is the fact of it. And anybody who stands to enter that corrupt institution are themselves an agent of treason, and I must admit, Paul Toussaint, he got back in touch with me and he asked me to see for some evidence and things, which I did send him a lot of links, and he's been, really well on the case. And obviously, like myself, we're all at a bit of a, well, how do we change anything then? What can we do? Because, we can't even vote our way out of this. Because just by taking part in the voting system, we are actually participating in treason and inviting people to declare themselves mentally incompetent. So, anyway, I after seeing Peter of England's video, I sent the link to Ubuntu UK, and I said I have suggested that Ubuntu UK sets up its own polling stations, alternative polling stations, where people can actually go and take their poll card and sign it in front of witnesses there and say, I am declaring myself mentally incompetent and I am choosing to leave my vote with you, who I trust will actually represent me truly democratically, and that you will listen to my ideas, and that I will have a say, you see. And that way, the more poll cards are given to Ubuntu, are entrusted to Ubuntu, those are legal, they are legal documents, and that's a legal declaration. And in the case of Ubuntu receiving more poll cards than is actually given to the poll stations, the official poll stations, that would mean that democratically the people have made their choice, and they've done it outside of the lawless system where they have to declare themselves mentally incompetent. They will actually be doing that by declaring out themselves mentally competent. We are mentally competent enough to know that Parliament is corrupt, and therefore, and the whole system, the financial and economic system, is corrupt. And we need change, we need positive change. And so we've decided to vote for the Ubuntu party. You see. So that's one way. I mean, I don't know whether they'd be able to set it up for this election, because it's so soon, and I just don't know if we could do it. And a lot of people don't even know what Ubuntu is. They've got absolutely no idea about it. I've seen videos where, and people are starting to attack it now, and they're saying, it was that Nelson Mandela supported it and Obama supports it. They don't. They never have. And it's been described as a New Age philosophy. Well, no, it isn't a New Age philosophy. It's as ancient as Celtic philosophy. It's ancient South African way of living. That's what Ubuntu is. The Celtic Christians lived by Ubuntu. The Voodoo Christians lived by Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is natural law, universal law that every native people had a comprehension of. I mean, today we can develop it and understand it with so much more clarity because we have so much more lived experience and history and knowledge to clarify it perfectly for us, you see. And it is all perfectly clarified in Ubuntu. And Michael Tellinger has done a fantastic job. He did not want to be a political party, but they're forced to be that in this world in order to get any recognition, because otherwise what are you? You're just a concept hanging in the air, whereas on the real ground is still being controlled by the politicians. So, he's had to put on the robe of politics. And I do hope that people do pick up on Ubuntu, because it is the only accurate way to live. It's a lawful way to live, and it encourages education, it encourages care, it encourages development of a more harmonious way of life, and a more economic environmentally friendly way of life. And obviously, we know that we couldn't just stop money immediately. So, the Ubuntu Party are going to create the People's Bank, because, people still believe in that, and it's a system that people are used to, they're accustomed to. But that money, if it's serving and upholding universal law, it isn't going to steal off people, you see. Whereas the money system that we've got now, it is just stealing off people, and it's creating all kinds of problems, because one of the ways that the money system steals off people is because it thrives on people being ignorant, of ignoring people's needs and forcing people to ignore other people's needs with justifications and judgments about those people, you see. Poor people are poor because, they're just worthless. What is it? Bill Gates described them as useless eaters, But that's what corporate capitalism thrives on, these so-called useless eaters. It creates them. But the people aren't really useless eaters. They're enslaved into being into just being consumers, because they're not allowed to do anything else, because they have no power, because their power they've been robbed of power, because they've been conned into voting for these people to control everything, and then they're controlled by the money and the corporations, and so then the corporations are taking control of everything. And it has reached the extent today where most of the world now is being controlled by a handful of global corporations, which are in turn all funded and financed by the World Bank, so it's all become a very small world, really, that's governing, literally billions of people's lives. Now, Michael Tellinger, he explains the money system here perfectly, and he's absolutely correct.
Cutting statement made in recent times, Thomas Jefferson, because this is what we find ourselves in today. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks, remember all our banks in the world, virtually all the banks are private banks, private corporations, whose interest is making profit at all cost. So if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around the banks will drive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. That's where we are standing today. All over the world, this is the situation we're in. Money is the obstacle to all progress. It does nothing for society. It is the absolute tool of control by those that control the issue and the printing of money. That's why.
So, there you go, you know, that basically money is the obstacle to all progress, and that is the irony of it, because money has funded a lot of what we see as progress, like nuclear power. But again, what's nuclear power? It's the thoughts of a few people, the spirit of war and warmongers and people who want to control and have ultimate power. That's what nuclear power is, you know. But we see how expensive a solar panel is and how cheap a computer is. I mean, how easy is it to make a laptop, and how difficult is it to make a solar panel? But, you know, we're told solar panels, oh, they're going to cost thousands of pounds. But it really isn't true, you know. We are persuaded to believe that it's really difficult for people to live without their money, their system, their economic system. That without that, you know, we'd all be living in chaos, and there'd be no law, and people, it'd be every man out for himself. But that is not true. In times of need, people come together and people help each other. And, you know, moving from this money world to a system like Ubuntu, it's not going to, it isn't going to be a change that happens without a bit of effort and struggle and sacrifice. You know, I'm not talking about sacrificing our lives. No, that's what this system demands, sacrifice of life. I'm talking about sacrifice of, you know, the dreams and hopes that we've built and that have been fed into us about the world. You know, that's just, we're going to have to say, no, we have to let all that go, because none of it was good, and it is actually lawless. So we need to develop new hopes and new ideals, because thoughts that are creating the money, you know, they're not stopping in the here and now today. You know, these thoughts have built these stones, and these stones are saying something. They're saying something to humanity. And these stones were erected by a very small group of people, sponsors, who are headed by an anonymous donor who's called himself R.C. Christian, or herself. We don't know if it's a man or a woman. So those few people who've had a lot of money, because you know, these are expensive to actually produce. A group of people with a lot of money and a lot of influence have had the power and the means to get these stones made and then engraved in 8 different languages, telling the world, proclaiming to the world what they want for the future, their guidance for the future of humanity, you see. And there we go. We start at the first sentence. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Maintain. Who's going to do the maintaining? Presumably the people who've made the stones. Under 500 million. The 6.5, there's 7 billion people on the planet now, so 6.5 billion people, according to them, well, they're surplus. Already, just in that first sentence, they've written off 6.5 billion people. That is just so disgusting, you know. And the rest of the rest of the guides, you know, it's all about a utopia for the few. What would we expect from people who thrive on an economy that is all about providing for the few by sacrificing the lives of many? And now they want to do that forever. They want to have total control of our planet and only ever allow 500 million people to live on it. This planet can support a lot more people than are living on it now. And the thing is that we wouldn't have population explosions if women had rights. The truth is that where you've got women with no rights and poverty, you are going to have population explosions because little girls are bringing the next generation. What they don't tell you is that most of those people, they only have a life expectancy of around 40. So they do reproduce younger and younger. And the infant mortality rate is just so high. It is despicable. And so they're saying, there should only be 500 million people, but, God said go forth and multiply. What, so we could all be killed off in a giant call? Because God likes his cup of blood? That is not the way we were meant to live. There's an abundance of humanity, and that's the difference between the thoughts that support Ubuntu and which Ubuntu supports. We value abundance, you see. An abundance of humanity, that's a wealth of humanity. The things that we can do, that we're capable of doing, all those hands are needed. But they want to throw them all away so that they can build their own little utopia on what's left. Because I tell you, there won't be much habitable left of planet Earth by the time they're done. They know that the only way for them to stay in control and power now is by controlling the diminishment of life. But it will lead to extinction because they are a cancer. One plague and that's it, They won't, because the universe thrives on abundance for a reason. That's what sustains it. You see, nature thrives on abundance because abundance sustains nature. When nature starts having to draw back, there's less and less. And we know that with the rainforests as they get chopped down, they don't regenerate. They eventually just die off and we're left with the desert. So, right from the start, from the word go, they're totally wrong. And you can see they've been graffitied and they've had to, look, this area is under video surveillance at all times. And, people say, well, we should smash them down. But, perhaps we should leave them standing as a testament to the arrogance of people, well, the arrogance of money, really, because the people themselves, they don't even realise how wrong they are because they're so indoctrinated. The people who are going to run the country. He went to Eton. Did he go to Eton? Who knows? But, they all go to, they're all educated in similar schools. Eton's had a long run of politicians governing our country. That's the consciousness. An institution, an educational institution, has been producing leaders and politicians and government ministers for hundreds of years in Britain. And it is time for that consciousness to go. It's time for it to go. It's old, it's antiquated, it's not living by new knowledge, it's not taking into account real needs of the real living world. They're raised in fantasies about and judgments about people, And when it came to the other year, Ian Duncan Smith was publicly being questioned by a tribunal about his handling of benefits, the benefit system in Britain, and he publicly referred to British people, sick and disabled and unemployed people who have to claim benefits, as stock. He referred to people as stock. you know, and like how low do they how much lower do they have to sink, you know? And then we've got things, you know, we've got this Hampstead case, and a friend of mine, she's her and a partner, they've made these videos, and they've been digging deep into to see if there is any information online that can support what the children are saying. And actually there is, you know. The coincidences are just too extreme, and they're really building up, you know. It is one thing for two children to say, well, these two people were child trafficking, and then quite another thing to look at those two people and say, well, actually they have got every opportunity, and they have visited all the countries where the children saying the babies are coming from, and they do actually have connections with people who could provide them with children if so they need it, you know. I mean, what are the chances of that? And you know, I'll leave you the link to this website, and I do advise you to go and look. But they are going to try and cover this up, because it is such a big thing, and it does involve so many professional people, and they are so powerful. And this is just the tip of the iceberg that is infecting this place and running it, you know. And recently there've been a lot of attacks on Asian people, you know, people talking about Asians, paedophile gangs, because there have been, and there are Asian paedophiles that they're not of any one race or colour or faith, you know. And the Asian people, they have actually responded in the way I thought, really, the staff and teachers at Christchurch School would have responded, which is they, you know, the innocent, the good people who've got nothing at all to do with paedophilia, those taxi drivers, they've come out, you know, and said, we are innocent, we do not take part in any of this, we stand against this, you know. And but we didn't see that from the teachers at Christchurch School, did we? Instead, they've all just stayed very quiet and all run to the police for, like, public protection, and asked the family courts to help them stay secret. They haven't all come out and stood up like the Asian taxi drivers in Manchester and the Asian communities, and got together saying, no, we are not this, we want this out, you know. There's just been silence. They're hiding behind the family courts. The Asian people haven't all run to the police saying, oh, please come and help us, you know, because we're all going to be attacked now because everybody thinks we're paedophiles. No, they stood up righteously saying, no, we are not paedophiles, and we condemn that outright. That's what you expect. You know, that's the spirit. That's the spirit. But we're living in a spirit of cover-ups, telling the Parliament, saying that, you know, it's a conspiracy theory. But we know that the paedophilia isn't a conspiracy theory. And it isn't just symptomatic. It's actually at the core. The core. Children are the most beautiful, valuable thing this planet produces. Think about that. And they get their hands on them. There's people want to get their hands on them. That's how they control life, the future, by controlling our children, by controlling their education, by controlling their society and their thoughts, and leading people astray, leading people to vote for these, so they can continue in their thoughts and continue supporting their illegal money supply. And the thing is, we're supposed to live like this. We're supposed to live like a rainbow. And it isn't by coincidence that in the Old Testament, the universe, who is referred to as Jehovah, says to people, I will leave you the rainbow as my promise, my covenant with you. It's like a contract. What do we read of this rainbow? Can we read this rainbow? What does it say? It's telling us that all the different colours, the diversity from one light source. And life is reflecting that on Earth. And every colour, all the colours come from the one light source. And we can see they're not divided by walls and sharp, hard lines. They merge, the colours merge. Like the races. The races will merge, but we'll always have our colours. We'll always shine. And that's how we need to live. Our thoughts need to shine like a rainbow. And then we live in harmony. We can still be diverse. We can still have our separate cultures, our faiths, our ways of life. But we all embrace and are embraced by universal law of abundance and compassion. You see, and all the it is the core at the heart of every faith, of every religion, you know, and even people who don't believe in any religion, even atheists, can understand, you know, that we need to live with compassion and that we need to develop a stable, happy life for our children to grow up in and live in. And we do actually need to raise children so they know how to raise their young as well. You know, it's no wonder we live in a world of paedophiles when people aren't educated to the needs of children. Nobody knows what a child needs. How many children leave school knowing the needs of a toddler or a baby? So we're commonly conditioned to believe that we're educating our children, but we're not. We're not educating them because we're not, you know, we've imposed this ridiculous Victorian education system on the whole of the world, where we teach children according to age groups, and it just doesn't work. It's not the way. It isn't the way children are supposed to learn. You know, you can learn about reading and writing while you're learning about the universe and your body and your being. An Ubuntu education is about recognising what's there in a child, their natural talents, and, you know, what will help them to be happy, because people are most happy when they are living according to what they can do best. And everybody should be valued for what they can do best. Perhaps some people, the best they can do is to be a surgeon, or perhaps the best they can do is to be a librarian, or a street sweeper, or somebody who serves in shops. But they're all equally important. Their jobs all serve us. They all help to make our lives comfortable and happy. You know, and we need to lose this idea that some people are more valuable than others. They're not. They're all valuable and important, and every person is helping other people. You know, unemployed people, they don't just sit at home all day. They do things to help other people. They help the neighbours, they help their friends, they help their families. The same with disabled people. My friend Dave Godin, he was dying of cancer, and yet he put together Deep Soul Treasures 4 album on his deathbed, you know, and all the royalties from that went to the families, the original artists that created the songs for those albums, the Deep Soul Treasures that he'd collected through his life. And he made sure that those families, even while he was dying, he was receiving phone calls from America, being told that, yes, we've just tracked down one artist, he was living out of a shopping trolley. You know, since then, the man's career has actually taken off, and he is singing again, and, you know, he's actually got a life Now, my friend Dave Godin, he did that while he was dying of cancer. So don't tell me that people who are sick and dying or ill have got no purpose in life anymore. They're not contributing. They do contribute, even if it's only to give advice to people and to give people strength around them. So we're just living in a totally wrong way of the way we perceive things, because we've been persuaded to value people according to how much money they have and how much money they're making. But there's a lot more to life than money. And our children are being denied, and the children of Earth are being denied, because the women have no rights, and the little girls need time to grow up and to know themselves and their menstrual cycles, and to become a fully developed adult, conscious, intellectual, because there's an intellectual side to motherhood. And that has been denied for children for too long, because we've got little girls raising the next generation. And the mother consciousness is not having time to grow up. The mother consciousness, she's about 12 years old. And as a result, the male consciousness is about the same, you know. And when we talk about mankind, well, all right then, let's get back to Genesis. Let us create man in our image to be like us, male and female. So man is male and female. And, because at the moment we are living in a lawless society, a lawless world governed by a lawless energies, consciousness, we are a widow. We need to accept that. No Superman is going to come and rescue us. We are going to have to come to our own rescue. We are going to have to stand up and protect our children, and we are going to have to raise those children into a new consciousness. So yes, let's move into the exodus. It is an exodus from the old consciousness that's a dead consciousness. It's like dead wood eating, that's choking up the tree of life. We need to remove those dead thoughts, and we need to live by new knowledge, because when you find new knowledge, then you can see that some traditions that we lived by are actually bad for us. So we have to let them go. And one of the traditions that a lot of religions and people have lived by is this idea of treating women like children, and they've got no rights. They have, and they are intelligent, and they do have equal rights. Every woman on planet Earth has got equal rights to a man. And she is not an object to be controlled. She is a person with the same power of thought as a man. And yes, there are differences between men and women and how they live, and all kinds of things that are different because of our different roles in life, but those are equal. A patriarchy supports a matriarchy, and a patriarchy can't exist without a matriarchy. That's why we're not living in a patriarchy at the moment. We're living in an oligarchy. That's what we're living in. A collection of men and women who profit off usury and exploiting people, and have given themselves rights to do that, and to the extent that they've made these blooming stones now to say how everything's going to be, and what they're going to do with their money. They've got the power, and now it seems they're going to fly away with it. But no, you know, we can't fight against them. We haven't got nuclear weapons. We haven't got guns and armies. All we have is our own feet and the light in our head and our heart. And we have to know that the way to live is according to universal law. And we have to know that universal law did create us. And it loves us with unconditional love. And no money can buy that love. No money can buy it. It's our devotion, what's in our hearts, that affords us that love. And that's why the poorest people are among the richest, because of what we've got in our hearts, because we freely share. It isn't about how much money you're going to get back or what you're going to get back for helping people. You just do things out of the love in your heart because you feel compassion and empathise with people, with life. And that is intelligence, you know. So, as I say, we've got consciousnesses. There's a consciousness, established consciousness. And there's our reactions to this established consciousness. And there's the invitations and opportunities within taking part in that consciousness. But then there's also another consciousness. A consciousness that is far older and promises to stay in us far further into the future and far more of us. Because, as I say, the universe loves the abundance of humanity today. And if we live right and lawfully and women have their rights, there will never be any population explosions again, you know. We will find stability. Because that, and time has proven, time has told that in every country where women have had rights and people have had interests to develop and self-development, education and opportunities, birth rates drop. They drop. You know, so we know this is an established fact. So we need to stop worrying about there being too many people. There are not too many people. There are just enough people now that we need, because we do need to clean our planet up. We really do. And there are jobs for everybody. And we're going to have to do it from our hearts. And because we know that we're going to come back. And even if we don't come back, our children are going to have to live in that, and their children, and we would like them to look back on us with love. So even if you don't believe you're going to come back, as I didn't when I was writing my piece, you know, my concern was purely for the children that we're leaving behind, because I didn't want to leave them with nothing, and in this world that is just so imbalanced and corrupt. But as I say, you know, it turns out that we probably will be coming, most of us will be inhabiting this world that we've left behind. So in that sense, it's very true. What we invest in life today is what we will receive in the afterlife. And no, people aren't funneled back according to whether they were good or bad in a previous life. It's all chance. You're either born rich or poor. You know, the richest people of today have every bit more chance, a lot more chance of being born poor and in poverty, in dire poverty, than they have in being born into wealth again. And perhaps when people realise that, they will change. I don't know. But I do know that the present way of life, the corporate way of life, it is unsustainable. We just cannot sustain it any longer. And it will destroy the planet. You know, that's what cancer does. A group of lawless cells, biological cells, with power to feed on life, which is what the money system is doing. They will destroy the host eventually. and it'll just die, you know, but it'll have enjoyed itself in the process, satisfied itself, and then it'll die, but there'll be nothing left behind. And the thing with Ubuntu is that you know, Ubuntu thrives on the philosophy that more produces more. And that's how it is. You give people more, and you get more from people. You give people more love, people are more loving. You give people less love, people are less loving. That's how it works. And so we do need to change our whole approach and, you know, live like a rainbow and celebrate this amazing planet and the absolute splendour of universal consciousness, and just how wonderful it is that it has created us and made us capable of understanding everything that I've explained here. And I do hope that Ubuntu do establish alternative polling stations, and I do urge people, you know, do live by facts. It's time that we started living by facts, not what we're told to believe, but by actual facts and knowledge. Because if we don't, we're living in a fantasy, and we shouldn't be surprised that the story doesn't have a happy ending for most of us. It only has a happy ending for the authors, how the authors who they want to succeed, you see. And if those authors are not following, thriving, or based on any true understanding of actual lived life on this planet, then, you know, it's not going to be a happy ending, or the ending won't make sense. And nothing does make sense if we live outside universal law. You're just living in chaos and nonsense. So please think about it. Think about our children. Think about their future. Think about the reality of what you're doing when you go and take your poll card and you put your power. You give your power to somebody else. Think about what you are doing. That's your power going into a pot for somebody else to use. And they're asking you to declare yourself mentally incompetent. No. Do think again. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Sorry it's another long video, but I hope that it helps to guide people, and I do hope that you share the information with others. So I wish you all well and send you my love.